34-year-old Leonard James Irving lived in Portland, Oregon, in 2011. His family and friends referred to him as LJ. He had 3 children aged 5, 6, and 7 on June 25, 2011. LJ, dressed in a long green shirt and dark jeans, went out to celebrate his nephew's 21st birthday. He had gotten off work at 9:30 p.m. from his produce job at Winco Foods and had to report to his part-time chef's job at the Lloyd Center's Courtyard Marriott by 7 the next morning. However, he told his girlfriend he had to join his nephew at Season & Sports Bar and Lounge on Northeast 82nd Avenue because family was important. Outside the bar after midnight, his nephew Lamar Lovett Hill and another man exchanged angry words, and LJ stepped in to calm the situation. LJ then walked across the street with his nephew to his minivan in the lot of the new Happy Fortune Chinese restaurant. But before they could get in and leave, someone fatally shot LJ 4 times in the back and shot Lamar in the neck, wounding him. Samuel Thompson, who owned the Season & restaurant, said he did not hear the gunfire because he was in the rear lounge where Benson High School alumni were celebrating their 10th reunion. But Thompson knew something was terribly wrong at about 12:30 a.m. when people rushed into his business. Thompson ran across the street and found LJ on his back, his right arm on his chest, beside his van with the driver's door open. Thompson checked to see whether he was breathing and dialed 911 at 12:37 a.m. "I sat down on the ground next to him," Thompson said. LJ's aunt heard that he had possibly been shot and drove to his mother Lucy Mashia's house, and they drove to the crime scene together. It was there that Lucy learned LJ was not alive anymore. "My son was an innocent bystander," she said. "Some coward shot him." LJ's girlfriend, Adrienne Malam, said she thought it was a bad dream at first. She got word while at home where she was caring for LJ's 3 young children and her own 4-year-old daughter. "I kind of cried to myself," Adrienne said. "Why do people do this? Why is it so easy for people to get guns? It is still surreal. I am thinking he could still be at work. Maybe he is not really gone. It's crazy how he can be there one day and not the next. They did not see the guy coming. It really hurts that it was cold-blooded for no reason." LJ grew up in Portland, but spent time during his high school years in Seattle with his dad's family. They described him as a dedicated father who saw his children on his days off and weekends and dreamed of working full-time as a chef. His specialties were spicy foods, prime rib on Christmas, and jambalaya. In 2005, LJ was sentenced in federal court to 60 months in prison for distributing illegal substances and had been on federal supervision since June 2009. "I thought my heart was broken that time," his sister said, but she was proud that LJ took responsibility for his actions and served his time without blaming others. His family said he matured, got his GED, and since his release had worked hard to make ends meet for his children, holding down 2 jobs. Investigators had few leads to work on, and the case unfortunately went cold not long after the investigation started. Then in January 2023, 37-year-old Jan Marcian Polk was arrested in connection with what happened to LJ Irving. Polk had been living in Multnomah County Jail since May 2022 for another case in which he faces similar charges. He has pled not guilty in that case. Portland Police Bureau Chief Chuck Lovell said he was thrilled with the news of the arrest. "I spoke to LJ's mother today, and she passed along her appreciation for the work of the detectives," Lovell said in a statement. "I agree. This arrest is the culmination of almost 12 years of diligent, meticulous work by investigators, and I am grateful to them for their tireless efforts to achieve justice for LJ." A trial date has not yet been made public. Samuel Johnson, who was one of the first people at the crime scene, formerly worked at Self-Enhancement Inc., a nonprofit organization that works with at-risk youth. He left SEI to start his own business, but launched Reclaim in the Village, a personal effort to spur the community to get involved to combat such violence. After Andre Paton, a 19-year-old on his SEI caseload, was fatally shot in Old Town, a case that remains unsolved, he said, "Portland needs to wake up." Thompson said, "At the end of the day, it has to be a call to action. The community needs to start preaching love once again. Too many lives have been taken for nonsense. It needs to be understood that a good man in LJ lost his life. Nancy McKeevers came into the world on October 16, 1954, in Portland, Oregon. She was born to proud parents, Henry Carl Pepper and Lenore Pepper. Nancy was the middle child in her family, having an older sister named Janet and a younger sister named Diane. From an early age, Nancy played a crucial role in keeping her family close-knit and harmonious. Her sisters fondly remember her as the peacemaker, possessing a heart brimming with love and a laid-back personality that strengthened their bond. Nancy's educational journey led her to Reynolds High School, where she excelled both academically and socially. With big dreams and a promising future ahead, she decided to pursue higher education at the esteemed Oregon State University. As she pursued her dreams, fate intervened in the form of Randall, the love of her life. The exact details of their initial meeting remain shrouded in mystery, but it quickly became apparent that their love story was destined to unfold. The couple tied the knot and settled in the peaceful city of Tigard, Oregon, where they soon welcomed their bundle of joy, baby Ross, around 1982, completing their idyllic family picture. However, as life often does, it took an unexpected turn. On the bleak winter morning of January 2, 1983, tragedy struck the tranquil suburb of Tigard. A frantic call reached the local sheriff's office, with Randall, Nancy's husband, reporting a devastating incident. His wife had taken her own life. Deputies sprang into action, racing to the couple's residence to assess the situation. What they encountered upon arrival sent shivers down their spines. Nancy lay lifeless on the floor, a gunshot wound to her head, with a Smith & Wesson revolver nearby, the apparent instrument of her demise. Randall stood nearby, visibly distraught, with their young son at his side. The deputies wasted no time and rushed Nancy to the nearest hospital, but their efforts were in vain. Despite their best attempts, she was declared dead. As investigators sought answers, they turned to Randall for an explanation. His account of the events was initially perplexing. He claimed there had been a struggle over the gun, with him attempting to wrest it from Nancy before it was too late. However, as the investigation unfolded, Randall's narrative underwent a transformation. Now he asserted that he had merely walked in on Nancy as she pulled the trigger, with no physical altercation. Detectives were left perplexed, grappling with the challenge of uncovering the truth behind this tragic incident. Despite the initial assertion of suicide by Randall, their suspicions were piqued. They understood the need to delve deeper into the available evidence, seeking the assistance of the Washington County Medical Examiner's Office, the Oregon State Police Medical Examiner's Office, and the Oregon State Police Crime Lab. These agencies embarked on a meticulous examination of the crime scene, collecting forensic evidence and scrutinizing the gun allegedly used by Nancy. As the evidence was scrutinized, discrepancies began to emerge. Nancy's hands showed no traces of gunpowder residue, indicating that she had not fired the weapon. Furthermore, her clothing bore signs of charred particles in 2 areas, suggesting a struggle or attempt at self-defense. Most damning of all was the distance between the gun's muzzle and the wound on Nancy's head, a distance inconsistent with suicide and pointing firmly towards foul play. With the pieces of the puzzle gradually falling into place, all signs began pointing towards Randall. In the month following Nancy's tragic passing, detectives received a series of phony calls from coworkers and friends of Randall, revealing an unsettling reality. It emerged that Nancy had been contemplating divorce, and there were troubling indicators in Randall's behavior that suggested he may have harbored intentions to harm her. As the investigation continued, authorities requested that Randall undergo a polygraph examination to aid in their quest for the truth. However, he adamantly refused and even ceased cooperating with the investigation entirely. Despite the mounting evidence in Randall's suspicious actions, the case reached a frustrating impasse by August 1983, leaving Nancy's loved ones without answers or closure. Nearly 4 decades later, in August 2022, Detective Enel Sarich and the Violent Crimes Unit decided to breathe new life into the investigation. Armed with advanced technology and forensic techniques, they re-examined the evidence with a fresh perspective. The Oregon State Police Crime Lab reviewed the 1983 lab results, which only strengthened the belief that Nancy had not taken her own life. The detectives conducted over 20 interviews, engaging with individuals such as detectives, deputies, and firefighters who had responded to the scene in 1983. These interviews uncovered new leads that held the potential to crack the case wide open. In January 2023, detectives finally had the opportunity to speak with Randall, who was still residing in Tigard. During the interview, Randall disclosed seeking therapy to cope with the trauma of Nancy's death. When asked about his wife's mental health history, he stated that she had none, but he vehemently denied any involvement in her death. Despite his denials, detectives remained convinced that Randall was concealing the truth, as all the evidence pointed squarely in his direction. Subsequently, detectives referred the case to the Washington County District Attorney's Office, aiming to secure a grand jury indictment against Randall and finally achieve justice for Nancy. However, just as it seemed that justice might be served, a tragic turn of events occurred on February 8, 2023. Randall took his own life, leaving behind a note in which he continued to deny any role in Nancy's death. The detectives who had devoted countless hours to the case were left devastated and grappling with a sense of unfinished business. Despite their relentless efforts to gather evidence, interview witnesses, and pursue leads, their main suspect's death left them with the likelihood that the case would remain unsolved. Nancy's surviving loved ones, including her mother and 2 sisters, were left to pick up the pieces. While the case was officially closed due to Randall's passing, his actions spoke louder than any words ever could. Though they would never uncover the complete truth about Nancy's fate, they found some semblance of closure, comforted by the detectives' unwavering commitment to seeking justice on her behalf. In Southern California, a region renowned for its sunny climate, laid-back way of life, and breathtaking natural landscapes, lies a place that bears a captivating blend of cultural influences. This area's identity has been shaped by a diverse mix of elements, ranging from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood to the rich Mexican heritage that permeates its streets. Southern California is also home to some of the world's most iconic attractions, including Disneyland, Universal Studios Hollywood, and the Santa Monica Pier. However, it was within this seemingly idyllic backdrop that a series of gruesome murders commenced on that fateful day of July 25, 1980. At the time, a young resident of Brentwood named Carrie Lenander, a Palisades High School student, and her close friend Tony Garfield, both 15-year-old juniors at Palisades High, decided to embark on a hitchhiking adventure to the corner of Wilshire and Barrington. Little did they know that their lives would soon take a harrowing turn. Their ride that day was provided by a man described only as Ken from Canada, a male Caucasian. Ken drove them first to the Hollywood area, where they stopped for a restroom break. Carrie and Tony had been consuming alcohol before hitchhiking, and as they made their pit stop, Tony began to feel dizzy. She informed Carrie that she needed to return home. Ken complied, driving Tony back to her house. Tragically, this would be the last time Tony saw her friend alive. The events that unfolded leading up to Carrie's murder remain shrouded in mystery. However, the next day, on July 26, 1980, at approximately 4:30 a.m., Carrie's lifeless body was discovered in a street gutter on the 3700 block of Victoria Avenue in South Los Angeles. The only trace of evidence left behind by the perpetrator was white rock material, found in her hair and near her body, which matched the material discovered across from Carrie's residence. This grim discovery hinted at the chilling possibility that her murderer might have been someone who either knew her or had been stalking her in the days leading up to the tragedy. Tony Garfield, however, had no knowledge of the person in question. The autopsy report revealed that Carrie had been assaulted and strangled to death. An unidentified DNA sample, presumably belonging to the perpetrator, was collected from Carey's body but remained of little use due to the limitations of forensic technology in the 1980s. Detective Tim Marcia, who was assigned to the case, believed that Ken and Carey had visited her residence, where she changed her clothes before their fateful outing. Yet, the exact circumstances and timeline of the murder remained elusive. Carey Lenander's parents, Carl J. Lenander III and Joyce Fadden, were understandably devastated by their daughter's tragic death. They were determined to seek justice for Carey, offering a reward of $50,000, in addition to a $25,000 reward from the LA City Council. Through various news outlets, Carey's parents spoke fondly of their daughter, who was just 9 days away from her 16th birthday, and pleaded with the public for any information regarding her murder, even though her case received limited media attention. Brief coverage on shows like Lost Lives and 60 Minutes shed some light on her story. Despite a lack of concrete leads, investigators remained resolute in their pursuit of the killer. Interviews were conducted and a suspect was on their radar, but an arrest proved elusive. Over time, the case grew cold, and it wasn't until early 2002 that the LAPD Cold Case Homicide Unit reopened it. Unfortunately, even this effort did not lead to the apprehension of the perpetrator. For the next 2 decades, the case languished in the archives of the Los Angeles Police Department, while Carey's family grappled with the pain of their loss and the lingering quest for justice. It wasn't until 2022 that the case saw a dramatic development when DNA evidence finally connected a 76-year-old man named Billy Ray Richardson to the crimes. However, the details of how this connection was made after more than 4 decades remain undisclosed. Surprisingly, investigators also linked Richardson to 3 additional murders in Southern California from the 1980s and 1990s. Among these crimes were the killings of 25-year-old Beverly Cruz and 22-year-old Deborah Cruz, whose naked bodies were discovered in an apartment in West Los Angeles. Another victim, 28-year-old Trina Wilson, was found with her throat slashed in Inglewood on December 31, 1995. All 4 murders appeared to be sexually motivated. On July 14, 2022, Billy Ray Richardson was arrested in Fort Worth, Texas, on charges of multiple murders, sexual assault, and burglary. He was subsequently extradited to Los Angeles to face trial and was held in Tarrant County Jail while awaiting legal proceedings. However, a tragic twist unfolded when Richardson was brought to the hospital in a wheelchair and pronounced dead on February 15, 2023. His demise resulted from complications of a cervical spine injury and blunt force trauma, with COVID-19, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and dementia listed as other significant factors contributing to his death. Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman expressed sadness for the victims' families, acknowledging that they would never witness Richardson being held accountable for his heinous crimes. However, the identification of the perpetrator offered some solace, ensuring that he would no longer pose a threat to society. In the end, justice may have been delayed, but it ultimately found its way to the victims and their grieving families, providing closure and a measure of peace.